Right, let's go. We are here to talk about matter cycling. So matter cycling is super important. You have got to be able to break down molecules or substances so that you can reuse those atoms. If you didn't, we would run out of atoms. You and I wouldn't be here because there would not have been atoms available to build our bodies. So you have to decompose things. You have to break things down. So I can explain how matter is recycled within an ecosystem. So one thing we do know about atoms, due to the law of conservation of matter, is that matter cannot be created nor destroyed. It just kind of moves around. And so whereas energy, when you're looking at a food chain, so you have grass on up to, I don't know, the human that eats the cow, that eats the grass, whatever. Energy is flowing, okay? Energy flows. It goes in one direction. And it also kind of comes out to the side. There's a lot of energy wasted. But matter is not. So matter goes from the grass to the cow to the human. And then when the human poops or dies, or the cow poops or dies, or whatever, those atoms are going to be recycled back to the grass. And so what you see is you see this circular movement versus linear movement, okay? I can describe the movement of water through an ecosystem. So water, there's three main processes. Let's see, we'll have some land here, we'll have a tree. Okay, so this is like a lake down here. We'll put a little fishy. Ooh, that is not a good fish. He's got some issues. But anyway, and so this is a lake and this is the land. All right, so water evaporates through regular evaporation, but also through the process of transpiration, which is the evaporation of water through leaves. And it moves up, and when it goes into the cooler parts of the air, parts of the atmosphere, it condenses back together, comes back to a liquid to form clouds. When that gets too heavy, then we start to see precipitation. So we have condensation up here. Now the cool thing about this is as water moves through the water cycle, it gets clean, precipitation. And so the water cycle not only moves water around because it can pick water up off the ocean and go dump it on land, so it's moving water around, it is also cleaning water as it goes. Because when the water evaporates, everything has a different evaporative point. I don't know, there's a word for that, vaporization point. I don't know. You know the chemistry word better than I do. But anyway, so when water evaporates, it doesn't necessarily take the impurities with it. Those get left behind sometimes. All right, I can discuss how carbon and oxygen move through an ecosystem. So, photosynthesis and cellular respiration are the primary ways that it's moving through, carbon and oxygen. We'll talk about another in a second. And so down here we have, let's see, we'll put the plants up. We'll put a flower up here. Okay, so that flower's doing photosynthesis. And down here, wow, got myself into a bind here. I got to draw something. There's a little kitty cat, okay? So we've got a little kitty cat there. All right, so carbon is going to be released out of the animal as CO2, and so it's going to go into the plant as CO2. The plant's going to spit that carbon back out as glucose, right? C6H12O6, and that's going to go into the animal as food. So you eat your carbon in, but you breathe it out. Plants bring their carbon in as air and release it as a solid, glucose. Okay, so that's how carbon moves through an ecosystem. There's also some carbon that is added through fossil fuel burning. I'm trying to think about where. I guess I want to put that over here because we're adding it to the atmosphere. I guess you could put it either place. It probably should have actually been over here. But anyway, fossil fuels add carbon. Not carbon dioxide, just carbon to atmosphere. What can be carbon dioxide, but all right. And then oxygen. Oxygen is released out from plants. We breathe it in. We breathe it out as CO2. So a lot of our oxygen comes out that way. And then the plants take it in as CO2. And well, actually they take it in more as water. That's where that oxygen comes from. And we do produce some waters too, so I can add that down there. But we release our oxygen in two ways. Okay, so that's kind of how carbon and oxygen are moving. And then it says, how do animals use carbon in their bodies? So carbon is found in carbs, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. Actually, C, H, and O are all found in those. Okay, so oxygen as well. That's another one. I can explain how organisms use oxygen in their cells or bodies. Oxygen, they also, of course, is found in water, and we're like 70% water. So oxygen is also found a lot there. All right, the next one says let me pull this down so that we're kind of going along. So there's the water cycle, there's the carbon-oxygen cycle, there's a couple other things going on, but for the most part, we're looking at photosynthesis, respiration, and the burning of fossil fuels. Then nitrogen. So in the nitrogen cycle, let's use black because I haven't used that yet. So nitrogen is a diatomic molecule, N2, which is in the gas. I think a lot of our air is nitrogen. I want to say 40 or 60, I'm thinking it might be 60% of the air that you're breathing in right now is N2, but you can't use it because our bodies can't break this triple bond. It's too strong, so super strong. However, guess who can break it? Not big old strong humans, not big old strong gorillas, but little old bacteria. And so the bacteria break that, into individual, I'm getting ahead of myself, into individual nitrogens. They incorporate that into ammonia. So NH4, I feel like there's also an NH3, but I think it has a charge. That is called nitrogen fixation. Because anytime you fix an atom, it means to put it into something larger. So it's nitrogen fixation because you're taking a single nitrogen and putting it into a bigger molecule. Then they do a process called nitrification that forms nitrites and nitrates. We'll just do plus. And these can be absorbed by plants. And so now once they get into plants, they can go up the food chain and get to the animals. Okay, so that's how it's going to get into everybody in the environment. Then when we urinate, because our urine has a lot of ammonia in it, a lot of urea, which is nitrogen-based. And so when we urinate and when we our feces as well, or if something dies, so dead raccoons and possums on the side of the road, or a deer or a tree falls over in the forest and dies and it decomposes, those nitrogens are going to be released and they're going to be converted back to N2 through the process of denitrification. So nitrification is making nitrites and nitrates. Denitrification is breaking those down and releasing that nitrogen as N2. And guess who does this and this and this? Bacteria. So next time you see a bacteria, tell it thank you. So where are nitrogens used? Well, nitrogens are used in carbs. Nope, I'm just kidding. I'm getting ahead of myself. They're used in proteins. So if you'll remember, amino acids had a central carbon. Coming off of that central carbon, there was a hydrogen. There's an R group, or what we call a functional group, or a side chain. There's a carboxyl group, which I didn't do a very good job drawing, OH. And then there's an amino group. And so that is where the nitrogen is found in proteins, that amino group right there. Okay? And then it's also found in nucleic acids. Nucleic acids. So again, a nucleic acid, got your phosphate group, and you've got your nitrogen base. Kind of had to squeeze that in there. And this is your 5-carbon. I should have drawn it bigger. 5-carbon sugar. So these nitrogen bases, adenine, cytosine, guanine, thymine, and uracil, they all are nitrogen based. And so for sure, nitrogen is found in our proteins and our nucleic acids because it's a part of every single amino acid. It's a part of every single base, which is a part of every nucleotide. All right, and then the last one is phosphorus. And I'm just going to show this one on the PowerPoint. I can't really do anything fancy to make it pretty. Phosphorus is basically taken up by plants, and then it goes up the food chain, and then when we poop or die and decompose, we release that phosphorus. So it's nothing exciting going on. A lot of phosphorus gets trapped in rocks. It's in bones and stuff, and so fossils and things, and just rocks in general, not fossil rocks, regular rocks. And so as those erode, as they go through erosion, it's going to release that phosphorus back into the environment. Now, the thing about phosphorus is it is too heavy in the forms that it's found naturally to go into a gaseous state, so it's always a solid or a liquid. And it is used in nucleic acids and not just DNA and RNA. When we think nucleic acids, that's what we generally think of. So DNA and RNA for sure, because it's this phosphate group right here, but also ADP and ATP, which are also nucleic acids. And as you know, I mean, we have tons of ATP in our body. When we break it down as ADP, I mean, this has 2 phosphates, this has 3. Phosphorus is what makes up phosphates. Phosphate is PO4. And so whenever you see phosphate group, adenosine triphosphate, that means there's phosphoruses around. I don't know if that's the plural of that, but and then it's also found in phospholipids. And I'm not going to write lipids because I don't want you to somehow mistake that I'm saying it's found in all lipids, because it is for sure not. But if you remember, a phospholipid kind of looks like this. It's what makes up your cell membrane. You have that phospholipid bilayer. But if you zoom into a phospholipid, what it actually is it's a glycerol molecule with 2 fatty acids. Okay, usually there are 3. There's usually a third one right here, and that's why we call it a triglyceride. But in a phospholipid, that third fatty acid is not there, and a phosphate group is in its place. And so this again has phosphorus, and you have tons and tons of those in your body. All right, so I can discuss how carbon and oxygen move through an ecosystem, how nitrogen moves through, how phosphorus moves through, how organisms use carbon in their bodies, how they use oxygen, how they use nitrogen and phosphorus. We've done all that. I can explain the purpose of decomposition, decomposers, and detritivores. So decomposition is what is going to release all of these atoms back to the environment. Again, it's why you and I are here, because those atoms that were tied up in other bodies 1,000 years ago or 2,000 years ago are now free to be reused, and decomposition is crucial for that. So decomposition is super duper important. It does happen at different rates in different environments, but it is really important no matter how fast or slow it happens. Who does decomposition? Well, the decomposers. This is mainly bacteria and fungi, but there are also detritivores, which are things that eat detritus, and detritus is dead and decaying matter. And things like fungi would be an example of that. Vultures, trying to think of other things, ants, things that you see like when there's a dead bird or a dead possum on the side of the road, things that you see eating that. Ew, gross, right? Those are decomposers or detritivores. So detritivore literally means eater of detritus. That's what that word means. And then I can explain ways in which humans interrupt or impact the biogeochemical cycles. So just to make sure you remember that term, bio means it goes through living things. Well, let's talk about this one, like the tree. Geo means it goes through things like the air and the clouds and the rocks, the parts of the earth that are non-living. And then chemical just tells you that it's an atom and bonding involved. All right, anyway, humans interrupting. Anytime we add more carbon by burning fossil fuels, or we add more nitrogen by adding fertilizer, or phosphorus is also found in fertilizer, we can upset the balance that have been naturally created with these cycles. These cycles have feedback, and so they're going to balance themselves out. If you have too much N2, then these other processes are going to slow down, so you're not making, or nitrification at least is going to slow down, so you're not making a bunch more N2. Well, if you artificially put in or remove some of these molecules, you're going to disrupt the balance or the homeostasis of this cycle. And we see this with nitrogen. We get these algal blooms, which cause lakes and ponds to age much faster than they should. And then we also see this with acid precipitation. When we burn fossil fuels, not only do we release carbon, we also release some molecules that join with water to make acids. And those acids can then fall and disrupt the ground or the water. They can acidify the water, killing organisms. They can acidify the ground, causing things that shouldn't dissolve to dissolve, and so it can create problems further up the food chain. And so that's why we want to make sure that we're trying not to disturb these, well, I didn't have phosphorus drawn, but just try not to disturb these cycles as best we can. And that is all about matter cycling. If you still have any questions, let me know.